Hello everybody, Nadezhda here, and in today's lesson we are going to learn all about shared parameters. We are going to learn how to create the custom parameters and how to integrate them in our project. Let's begin. Here, as you can see, I have one project, and let's first cover up what are exactly the shared parameters. Shared parameter is basically a parameter that is made by you. It is not one of the default parameters. So for example, when I select this room, I can see that among the default parameters, I have number, name, occupancy, etc. All of these are default parameters, but whenever you are working on some larger project, for many of the elements, rooms, walls, floors, etc., you are going to be needing more parameters than these default Revit parameters. So when I scroll up, you can see here that I have this room function parameter, and that parameter is actually the shared parameter. It is parameter that I created myself. So let's go through the process of creating one shared parameter. First thing you do is you go to the manage option, and here you can see the shared parameter icon. Now we have the empty list of the shared parameter, and it is important to actually differentiate a couple of steps that we have in this process. The first step is creating the file for shared parameters, and first we go to the create option. Of course, if you already have a file that you created for some previous project, you can just click browse and select it, but since this is a beginner's lesson, we are going to be covering the creation of the shared parameters file as well. So we click the create, and I'm just going to find some place for my project where I'm going to create these shared parameters. In my case, I'm just going to create the new folder on desktop, but that is definitely not a good approach. The actually good approach is actually thinking about where you are going to be using this shared parameter file, because you have two options now. You have the option of creating a new shared parameter file for each project, or you have the option of using one file for all the projects you work for. There is no correct rule. Essentially, if you work, for example, in a small company and you create very similar project, then you are probably going to be using one shared parameter file for each project, so you don't have to create each of these parameters again. But if you work on very different projects, then obviously that is not a good approach, because you are going to have the file that has a lot of parameters that you do not need on each project. So basically you have to see what kind of work you do and then decide that. For me, I have a couple of files, couple for architectural projects, one for interior design projects, and very often these files are the client specific, so you might have to modify them very often, and you basically decide this on your own. Now that I have chosen the folder, I also choose the name. And this also goes for the previous thing that I said. Basically, here you can either add the name of the project, or you can have some general architectural file or something, whatever works the best for you. Once we have decided the name and the folder, we click save. Of course, that goes for the folder as well. If it is the project-specific file, you add it to the folder of the one project, but if it is a general file, then you should create some folder that is not in any of the specific projects. Basically, you decide what works best for you, because in these cases there is no correct answers. That all depends basically on the work you do. So first step is done. We have created the file, and the next step is creating the groups. Groups are basically how you are going to be using your shared parameters. There is also no rule here. Basically, you have to categorize your shared parameters by the way that they will be used. It is different for all of the people. Usually people either categorize them by some functions or some usage or some discipline or some elements. It really depends on the project, and on the way you work. As for me, I usually categorize them by the elements. For example, I will have the door shared parameters group, room shared parameters group, furniture, etc. Mostly I categorize them by the elements. But as I said, everybody works different. Here you basically come up with a system that is the most efficient to you. So we click on new and let's just call this room parameters. And click OK. And the next step is actually creating the shared parameter. So I click new here. And let's just call it the room type. You have, of course, the freedom of naming your parameters however you want. It is, of course, important that that name is clearly understandable to you and to other parts of your team if you work in teams. So make sure that these names are very clear, and when you see a shared parameter, you instantly know what it is used for. Discipline we can either choose from one of these or we can leave it as common. I will leave it as common, and now we have some data types. This is actually extremely important. It is important because this data type actually decides what kind of input you are going to be able to give to your shared parameter. For example, if I use text here, it is going to be a textual parameter. I am going to be able to import text in this parameter. But if I use, for example, area, it will be a parameter that can only have the numeric value, and the suffix will always be square meters or some other units that you are using in your project. But it is important to know that if you do not pick the right data type, you will not be able to insert the value you want. For example, if you insert number, that way you will only be able to insert the numerical value, no suffix nor anything. And if you, for example, choose material, you will be only able to pick material from your material library. You will only be able to pick the material from your material libraries in Revit. So it is important to actually review these types of the parameter and then choose what you are actually going to be inputting in your shared parameter. In my case, I'm going to be using text because it is going to be a textual value. And as for text, you basically have two options. You have this basic text and you have the multi-line text. And the difference is with the general text, you can only input the value in one row. And with the multi-line text, you can actually input the entire text. You get the text box and you can create new rows, spaces, whatever. I am going to be adding the general basic text here. And I'm going to click OK. And now we have created the shared parameter, but we're still not done because the next step is actually adding that shared parameter in your project. To understand the process, you need to know that what we have so far done is that we have created this textual file, we have created the shared parameter, and the group which we wrote in that textual file. But we have still not actually added it to our project. When I open this file that I have created, we can see that we have added some data in it, and we can actually see our parameter. Here it is written as the room type, text, and it has some other data that is important for the software. By the way, don't edit this manually. I am only showing this to you just so you can understand the process fully. Once I close this file, the next step we have is actually adding our file to our project. We are also in the Manage tab, and here we enter the Project Parameters option. Now we create the new parameter. And here, instead of project parameter, we are going to be choosing shared parameter. And in the shared parameters option, previously our file has been set up as the default file for this project. And now we basically choose from these groups, and currently I only have one group, and we select the shared parameter that we want to use. I click OK, and now we have some basic options which we choose from. First is whether we want it to be type or instance, and that parameter that I have showed you in the beginning of the lesson, it was the instance parameter. Instance option gives you the ability to actually add data to the single element, and each element can have the different data in it. And if we choose type, we basically have to click on the element and then go to the edit type, and in order to change the parameter value, we have to create the new type. For rooms, we cannot choose the type option because I cannot create the new type of room. It is only for the physical family, so in this case I'm going to be choosing instance. Here I can also choose some other sub options for my data type, and I will just leave this as text. And here I'm just going to find the rooms. I select rooms, and also you can select many of the different types of elements. You can select as many as you want. Many different elements can share one shared parameter, so however many types of elements you choose here, it is going to be alright. But in my case I just need rooms, so I click OK. And now that we have done all that, we click OK. And now when I select one room, I can see that this room type option appeared. And now I can just insert some value, let's say entertainment, for example. And the good thing about these parameters is that you can actually also add them to schedules, you can add them to tags as well. And I will go to this one schedule that I have previously created for the previous tutorial. I can go to fields. And now I am able to add this room type that we have created. I add it, and as you can see in our gym, we get this parameter that we have entered. The same way is for adding the tags. For example, if you want to add the room tag with a shared parameter, I'm just going to edit this existing family. And to create the label of the shared parameter, what you do is you go to the label option and you click as usually. But instead of choosing it here, you actually create the new parameter here, and the only option you actually get is the shared parameter. So you click on select and you select this parameter that you have created and you click OK. And now you simply add that parameter here and click OK. And now I'm just going to load that into project. And as you can see here, we have this beautiful entertainment text. So this is basically how you create all of the shared parameters. The process is the same for all the types. It is very functional. It is very useful feature because very often you are going to be using it both in schedules and in tags. So this is actually how you do it. Thank you for watching and see you in the next lesson. Bye! If you want to learn Revit like a pro, take a look at my architectural course through the link below. You will learn how to develop the project from concept to final design using Autodesk Revit. It is ideal for beginners, but valuable for anyone looking to build a solid foundation. By the end, you'll know how to take a design from concept to detailed documentation with confidence and clarity. You will gain a solid Revit workflow you can actually use independently or in work in larger teams in architectural studios. With almost 100 structured video lessons, it is designed to help beginners master Revit step by step. To support your progress, I've included assignments with each lesson, plus the opportunity to ask questions and receive guidance directly from me whenever you need it. This way, you're not just watching tutorials, you're actively learning, practicing, and improving every step of the way. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.